dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, I sit down with Talley and Mike Henry, owners of Acre and One Acre Wines in Napa Valley. Acre Wines, formerly known as One Acre Wines, was originally owned by David Becker. The property originally was planted with fruit trees. When the trees started showing some issues, he decided to plant over to vines with 2,000 surplus Cabernet Sauvignon vines from a nearby winery. The property was a single acre in the Oak Knoll district just north of the town of Napa. In 2017, David sold Acre Wines and One Acre to Mike and Talley Henry, fulfilling their lifelong dream. They hired winemaker Richard Bruno, and together they pride themselves in producing wine that expresses the unique characteristics that define Napa Valley. Their tasting room is located in the studio by Feast It Forward, located directly across from Oxbow Public Market in downtown Napa.
Never let you go.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, someday service, champagne specialist, and WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
Oh yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Dracaena Wines. I am your host, Lori, and I am a UC Davis winemaking graduate. I am WSET Level 2, Champagne Specialist, and Someday Certified. And today I am virtually traveling north, and I am heading up to Napa, and I am speaking with Talley and Mike Henry of Acre Wines. So welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's
Great
so
to
nice
meet you.
to be here. Yeah, wonderful to meet you. And thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And that is a beautiful, beautiful vineyard we've got right behind you. So which vineyard, we'll go right into it. Which vineyard is that?
Absolutely. This is the Lamb Vineyard behind us. So this was Dave Becker, who was the founder of One Acre, started with his family plot in Oak Knoll. And about, probably 10 years after that, he ended up planting this vineyard. The Lamb family are the owners of this. Behind you, you can see Silverado Trail, and then at the top of the hill, just out of vision, is the Poetry Inn. So in case you want to know kind of where it's situated in Yountville. So literally kind of the southeast corner of Yountville there. Beautiful 1 acre plot, planted completely to Cabernet Sauvignon. In fact, the same clones as the Cabernet Sauvignon that he planted in Oak Knoll. And that was kind of his reason for planting both of those, is to study how the same vines, same clones would behave in two different microclimates.
With the exact same farming techniques.
That's
as well.
right. That's
so
right.
It's definitely a study, vineyard comparison and terroir.
Absolutely. Definite science. I love science experiments that only have one variable, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing you can see looking back here is that the rows are so narrow because, he when he learned how to plant vineyards, he learned according to the European way. And so he planted very close rows and very quickly realized that he didn't have a tractor that would go through it. So
lawnmower, yeah.
Yeah, he would buy a lawnmower every year at Costco and destroy that lawnmower by the end of the season.
Yeah, they're beautiful though. They really are impeccably farmed. We're really fortunate to get to work with his grapes, which we still do, which is terrific.
That is awesome. So we're going to do we're going to backtrack and do a little history. So honestly, my always first question is the origin story. Okay. Like, how did you get into wine and all that? But, as I was trolling you guys to come up with questions, okay. Talley, Jack, you
So yeah,
I have to say, my eyes popped out of my head. I got a huge smile. So honestly, the reason why is, and I'm probably sure it has nothing like it, but my parents love that show, Jack. So I have watched that show so many times that I can almost do the dialogue. So I saw Jag. So tell us what it's like to be Jag. Is it like the show? Tell us what it's like.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So yeah, definitely not the most linear route to the wine business, but it was a great experience. Yeah, absolutely one of the highlights of my former career. And here's what I'll say. There was a lot that's definitely like the show and the kind of cases we had and that kind of thing. I think, sometimes they made some of the formalities a little bit more so, to underscore a point there. But yeah, it was definitely an adventure and just a terrific way to represent. I was actually initially a prosecutor, but ultimately for the greater part of my JAG career was a defense counsel. So I was representing sailors for whatever, infractions they were accused of under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the military's penal code. And was, I absolutely loved it and definitely have some really interesting stories. Seems like another lifetime ago, but definitely a lot of similarities to the show. Yeah.
Wow, all right. I'll have to tell my parents. Good job.
Perfect.
Like I don't know what time it's on anymore, but it's on the repeats, and that's that is the channel that they go to. They love that show. So I was like, oh my God, I actually even called Mike. Guess what? I'm going to be talking to a real JAG person.
Nice.
All right. So now we can go to the origin story. So first of all, I know, Mike, you worked in wine previously. But right. How did you guys come together and how did you fall in love with wine? What was that aha moment for each of you that you're like, yeah, wine's pretty darn good?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think just to preface this, and then we'll pass this over to you to start. It's funny when we kind of think about this question, I feel like there's sort of three origin stories. Mike's, his dad, Warner Henry's, and Mike can tell you about him because that's definitely, kind of the foundation and backdrop of everything. And then kind of ours together and mine. And it's, again, not the most direct route, a little circuitous getting to this point, but definitely happy to be here. And here's how it started. So yeah, go ahead.
So my journey in the wine business started when I was fairly young because my dad was a collector. He was a big time enophile back, in the 70s when that was, still kind of an oddity for, some guy in Los Angeles to just be super into wine. And he found groups of friends who were also super into wine. And they, in fact, started a couple of different groups, one of which was called the California Wine and Food Society. The other one was called the California Vintage Wine Society. And they were really champions of California wines, even back in the 1960s and 70s. For me as a kid, what that really meant was, my dad was breaking open a bottle of 68 Mondavi and he was giving me a little pour of it and saying, what do you think of this? And, what? I'm not going to rub it in. He still has a few of those bottles left. He passed away last year, but right up until the very end, he always loved to share not only his knowledge, but, share wine. In the 1980s, he ended up getting involved in the wine business. He actually bought a small distributorship in Southern California. He, through a series of mergers, acquisitions, turned that into a statewide company, the Henry Wine Group, which I ended up working for. Well, briefly, I worked in their warehouse when I was in high school, but that was just, really picking orders. And, that was probably the best introduction. Yeah, exactly. That was very cheap labor. And then I actually took a very circuitous route as well. I went to college in Colorado. I was an IT person and living in New York for a while. I ended up getting a master's degree in business and thought, I had some good friends who were film directors. And I thought, well, I'll just help them work on their small documentary films and this will be fun. And, what I realized very quickly was that was a really, really hard line of work to be in, unless you were, working for, some, people with money, I guess you'd say. So
You chose winery.
Right. Yeah. So, we haven't learned that lesson.
Yeah. Talley and I were actually sitting in a vineyard. We were on a trip in 2008, I think it was, or 2009. And we were in a vineyard in Bordeaux. And, it's funny, we told this story recently, and I realized that it's a funny aha moment, because you're sitting in the middle of a vineyard and the vineyard manager is telling you about all of the difficulties of the harvest. They'd had hail that year, they'd lost a third of their harvest. And, how this was my moment of saying, boy, I want to get into this industry. I don't know. But, what they pointed out was that the fruit that was still hanging on the vine was actually perfectly developing. And I had that kind of, the bell went off in my head, the harmony between the grapes that are being grown in the vineyard, what happens to them when they're in barrel and then laid down in bottle, and what the end result is when it's poured into your glass. And even though I'd been drinking wine my whole life, I'd never really had that moment when it all kind of came together. And so I went to work for my dad. I was a sales rep in San Francisco, dragging a bag around to retailers and restaurants, and, kind of learning the business the best way that you can, which is by knocking on doors and, a lot of times having the door shut in your face and learning what that feels like to gain someone's trust. Then became a regional manager, a brand manager, and reached kind of a point where we were trying to figure out, what the next step was. I don't know if you want to take over and tell your origin story.
Well, it's funny because I think we had that shared epiphany in the vineyard, and that kind of planted the seed. And then a couple years later, we were, kind of as you do, talking to your partner, and you're like, all right, what are our dreams? What are our goals? Short term, medium term, long term. And it was funny because during that time, one of the medium term, long term goals that we knew that we wanted to be the ones who are making the wine and bringing it out to the world, and kind of having a vision and carrying it through, and starting with those grapes in the vineyard. And like Mike said, following that thread till it gets in your glass. And then, and then even beyond that, where it's alive in the bottle, and one bottle you have a year later, totally different. And, but I had this moment where we were actually at a winery in California with Mike's parents and some friends, and we were talking to their general manager, who was just describing, and I was at my law firm at that point after I'd left the Jaguar, and I just had this spark of like, oh my God, this would be absolutely incredible. Like I could really kind of taste it. It was something that was a little bit, we talked about in theory, but I kind of had that vision. And Mike's dad, Warner, again, who's just this person who is so inspiring, and he believes in people and sees things in you you may not see yourself. So shortly after that, he basically came to us with a project and said, hey, there's this winery, a family-owned winery. This is actually in Russian River. And he said, if you're interested, you guys can take this and run with it and see if it can happen. And we worked on the deal for about 6 months. We met some just incredible people. I mean, I think one of the things that we've learned over these last few years, and this was prior to that, was how important those relationships are. And, particularly when you're switching gears, and obviously Mike has a, terrific foundation on the distribution side, but it's moving to the supplier side, having that connection and people you can turn to. And we worked actually with Mary Edwards and her husband, Ken Cooper Smith, who were just fantastic. And, just learned so much from them, and Justin Fagioli, who used to be at Ravenswood. And during that process, really, kind of started to understand what would be undertaking. And that project, had 70 acres and a huge winemaking facility and a number of different brands. And we were ready to do it. Very excited. It didn't happen. We say, blessing in disguise, because we literally a month after it should have closed, we were pregnant with twins. So that was a whole other undertaking. But anyway, so fast forward about 5 years, and I guess it was 5 years. Mike had worked, representing Acre, and knew Dave Becker, who he mentioned, and Bob Babby, who was the co-founder, as their brand manager. They were ready to move along and do different things. And it was kind of kismet with the timing. And this was very much the right project for us, and we really believed in what they were doing. Mike was intimately familiar with it, and we thought, okay, let's take the baton and continue with that legacy. And so sorry for the lengthy, multi-layered story there, but
that's
kind of
awesome.
how it all came together.
You've got, I always say things happen for a reason. I'm a very aura, kind of like, oh, look at this, that type of person where things happen for a reason and things don't happen for a reason. And
Yeah.
I tell my husband all the time, my gut is telling me no. My gut is telling me no. And 99% of the time, if we go against my gut, I told you, the gut said no. So
I totally agree with you.
Things happen.
Yeah.
But
And it was
Mike,
definitely a trust fall to jump into this. This was brand new territory. And you think, I thought coming from the distribution side, boy, this is going to be an easy transition, but you realize very quickly, and as well, running a winery is really hard. It's a hard business, and there are a lot of decisions that you have to make on a pretty much a daily basis. From what's going on in the barrel, what you're going to bottle that year, to just kind of general purchasing decisions that people don't even think about. I mean,
and a lot on speculation, and kind of
Right.
leaping out. When is this actually going to be, released? And, what will that landscape look like? Because it's years down the road, particularly with the red wines.
right, absolutely. It's not something that you make today and you're selling tomorrow. It's what's going, what's going to happen 2-3 years down the road, and what am I doing then? But yeah. So Mike, I trolled you a little also. And I saw that you were in the film or whatever. So I'm like, this is Kismet. This is us. This is why we need to talk, because one of my sorority sisters is a documentary producer, and
nice.
she's done some amazing work, and she's just what is it? Cinequest, I think is the name. Are you familiar with that film festival?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's in San Jose.
Yeah.
So she did a movie documentary called Anchor Point about women wildfire fighters. And
Wow.
so it's
Neat.
so like amazing timing and all of this stuff. And it's called Anchor Point, and she's world premiere is tomorrow, actually.
Oh
But
my
it's
gosh,
it's
fantastic.
virtual.
Check it
Yeah,
out. Oh,
it's
that's
virtual.
great.
So
Of course, they all are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is like we're connected in so many ways
Absolutely.
already.
Great.
So how did the two of you meet?
So it goes back a ways. We met actually when we were about 7 years old at Stanford Sierra Camp on Fallen Leaf Lake, which is a family camp, and that we still go to every summer with our families. It's near and dear to our hearts. My parents actually met at Fallen Leaf Lake. My brother met his wife there. We've recently bought a cabin here. Mike's sister bought a cabin. So definitely a special place. So we met when we were 7, and we're camp buddies for years and years. And then we both kind of went off and doing our separate things, and college and starting careers and that kind of thing. And then in our late it was a late something 30s. I'm like,
30s.
yeah, there you go. Let's not count.
Sure.
We reconnected skiing in Park City, and thrilled to run into my old camp friend who I hadn't seen in a number of years. And we went out to dinner and just totally connected over food and wine, and both of us, a passion for it, and kind of, I think, planting the seeds for, where we are today, which is great.
It's so interesting, because there's so many stories behind the scenes. And when it's a couple that own the winery, like my husband and I, we fell in love over food and wine also. Probably more wine than food for us. I technically prefer I'm a very picky eater, so I tend to prefer to consume my calories in liquid form.
I hear that.
But and when it seems to be that common theme throughout couples who own wineries or are involved in the wineries, that they really fell in love over wine and food, that that's that relationship that came together.
Well, it's such a wonderful connector. I mean, I love that with, you know, our relationship, but our favorite thing is pairing wine with friends and food. And, you know, and what that, you know, I mean, I can remember the bottles that I've had, you know, 2 decades ago, you know, who I was sitting with, you know, what we were drinking in that moment. And I love the fact that it kind of captures a moment in time and that relationship and what you were doing. And yeah, so I love the fact that it is such a connector.
Absolutely. So the thing that caught my eye on your website when we first started talking about the interview was your tagline. So dusty boots, stained hands, and classic wines. So I love it. I absolutely love it. So you got to tell me the story behind it. How did we come up with that? And
so that was definitely Bob and Dave, our founders,
okay.
Bob Abbey and Dave Becker.
Yeah,
Dave, really, I think what it came down to, you know, Dave's motto for One Acre was 1 acre, 1 guy, 1 wine. And the reason was that, you know, he was the guy who, you know, he went down to Napa Valley College. He learned how to grow grapevines. He learned how to make wine. Very much a self-taught kind of guy. Bob, who had actually come into the business from the distribution side, from one of the predecessors to the Henry Wine Group, oddly enough, had then gone to work for Tony Cartledge at Cartledge and Brown, and actually ended up becoming a partner at Cartledge and Brown before that was sold. So he had a lot of industry experience as well. And so I think that the notion was that, you know, if you're going to be out in the vineyard, you know, your boots are going to be dusty, your hands are going to be stained with grapes, and that's how classic wines are made.
And I think, you know, for us, I mean, one of the things that drew us to Acre and One Acre was their philosophy, which I think really is embodied by that tagline. And, you know, one of the things that's so, you know, obviously we fully believe that that wine, it starts in the vineyard, and it's the most important component. And second to that is the vineyard management of it. And so our relationship with our growers and our vineyard managers and the folks that you know, each of the growers is in partnership with what you have for all of the family owned vineyards with which we work and source from. These are multi-generation growers, like, you know, 4th, 5th, moving on to 6th, organically farming, sustainably farming. But what I also love is that multi-generation within the partnership of the grower and vineyard managers. For example, we source a lot of our grapes, the majority of them from Yount Mill Estates, which is owned by the Hoxie family. And they're the owners of the Napa Wine Company, which is where we make our wine. And they have, again, their 5th generation growers and farmers. Their vineyard manager, Jim Del Bondio, his father started working with them in the 1930s. And, you know, and he then took the baton from his dad, and, you know, they've continued that in their 4th generation, you know, vineyard management. And then to that end, the year after Jim took over, Yount Mill Estates, there's 635 acres of vineyards, 7 single vineyards in Oakville, about 35% in Oakville and 65% in Yountville. They became certified organic, one of the first, you know, vineyards to do that, and for all 635 acres in 1986, which is kind of incredible.
Wow.
So I feel like that, you know, that dusty boots, stained hand, classic wines, it's, you know, what Bob and Dave kind of passed us, and, you know, what we're trying to continue on with really is encompassed by that. With the classic wine piece, you know, what we really want to be making are classic Napa Valley varietals and really showing them in that classic Napa style. So they laid the foundation, and it just really resonated with us.
Yep.
So,
and the other thing about the Hoxie family too is that Andrew Hoxie actually was instrumental in getting Bob and Dave off the ground with Acre Wines as well. Not only providing just kind of, you know, moral support, but also you know, providing the fruit that they were able to use. And so they had actually partnered up on that project initially, which has really been a huge help to Bob and Dave. And again, yeah. Classic wines.
Yeah.
So just walk me through this. So because you actually live in San Francisco, is that correct? Or
we live in Marin County. So we're in San Francisco. Yeah, Marin, across the bridge from San Francisco.
Okay. So you're up there you're married, you're sitting down over dinner. Are you like, well, not that anybody reads newspapers anymore. So are you like, looking through the wine ads for a winery, and like how,
We actually got a call from a friend in the business.
Former Henry Wine Group person.
Yep. Also former Henry Wine Group person who worked with Andrew Hoxie, who also knew Bob and Dave very well. And so he got us in touch with them. And essentially it was, Bob could have probably picked up the phone and called me, but I think, he probably wouldn't have presumed to know who was interested in buying a winery and who wasn't. But our friend Paul was, and so he gave us a call and said, "Hey, if you're interested in this, let's keep the conversation going and let's see if it's a fit." And it was. It
and I think the timing, again, you're talking about that things happening for a reason, and how important so often timing is. So the family, the Henry Wine Group, so that our family, Mike's dad and family decided to sell the Henry Wine Group. So that has since been purchased by Winebow, and Mike stayed on after the sale for about 6 months to help with that transition. But we were kind of in that place of soul searching, now that this wasn't the family business that, it was, and, realizing, I think one of the things that was really interesting in the wake of that was Mike kind of realizing how important, that feeling of responsibility and connection and taking care of the people, was for him and for his dad and for his brother, who all, and who were all part of it. And when, once it shifted, which definitely was the right decision at the time, that piece of it was gone. And so we were talking about, over dinner, like, we want to build a family business. We want to do what your dad did. We want to, kind of build something and grow it and, nurture it. And so timing wise, the friend that reached out knew, kind of about that, backdrop, and was like, I think maybe they're interested, they could be interested. And so he's a wonderful connector, a terrific mentor. And I love that he put Bob and Dave, together.
Yeah. And I remember the call so well because I had been thinking, we've been thinking kind of like in a 5-year plan, like I'll go and work for a producer for a winery. I'll get to know the ropes and I'll have kind of that transition. And then I get the phone call, hey, I don't know what your next step is, but what do you think about this? And next thing you know, here we are taking the reins from Bob and Dave. What an incredible.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
And now this was in 2017 when you purchased it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's right.
Exactly. And Bob it was already 1 acre.
So 1 acre started, the first vineyard was planted, Dave planted it in 2002.
Okay.
First vintage produced was 2005. And to his and many others' surprise, that Cabernet, he entered in an international wine competition in Hong Kong and learned that it was awarded best in class out of 500 other wines. So that was amazing. And so he and Bob, he then had planted a couple of other single acres. And he, the Zinfandel acre on his neighbor's property, and then the Lamb Vineyard behind us, as Mike had mentioned. And so then a few years after that, Bob and Dave said, we love 1 acre. We want to keep it exactly what it is and really want to stay true to that, single vineyard, single varietal 1 acre plots, but you can only produce so much, as from an acre. And so in order to kind of reach a broader audience, still with the same integrity, vineyard management practices, that's how Acre was born. And so they started, the first vintage was 2012. So coming up on the 10th harvest this year and the 20th for 1 acre. So kind of exciting 2021. And yes, so that both of those brands had existed. Acre had distribution. 1 acre has always been direct to consumer, but so Acre was what Mike was representing for Bob and Dave at the Henry Wine Group.
And now a word from our sponsor. Did you know that Dracaena Wines has a wine club? We named it the Chalk Club. Draco is on our label, but Vegas was getting a bit jealous, so we decided he deserved to be our wine club spokesdog. In Las Vegas, betting chalk means that you are betting on all of the favorites, and we're gambling that once you taste our wines, we will become one of your favorite wineries. The club is simple, yet a bit different than most. We don't ask for a lot of commitment like others do. Choose between 3 tiers. The Sweet 16, where you'll receive 3 bottles twice a year and get 25% off all orders. Sign up for the Elite 8 and get 30% off all orders and receive 4 bottles twice a year. Or make it to the Final 4 and receive 6 bottles twice a year, as well as receiving 35% off all purchases. All tiers receive discounted shipping, are customizable, and are eligible for unlimited referral bonuses. Add $15 to your bank for each person you refer. Head to www.dracinawines.com or the link in the show notes to find out all the Chalk Club has to offer and to sign up. We've stocked the odds so that you can get our award-winning wines without breaking the bank. So now, are you keeping these as 2 separate entities? Is there an acre winery and a 1 acre winery, or do they
1
come
acre is now
together?
we're making the wines. Both of the wines are being made at Napa Wine Company now. They are both brands that are under our,
Umbrella.
Aegis, umbrella. And but 1 acre remains committed to being a single acre farmed, generally single variety wine. The 2 wines that we have, again, are both varietally 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. And that's the plan going forward with 1 acre. While acre, of course, is a project that can expand depending on, how much people are willing to buy and how much our suppliers are able to provide for us. And, again, working with Yacht Mill Vineyards and the Hoxie family, we have access to some really great fruit. We have a couple of other growers that we work with as well that have just been incredibly generous with their time and have made it some of these great wines and some of these great grapes available to us for to make our wines.
Yeah, and I think so with 1 acre, we are expanding a little bit just that we are identifying additional 1 acre plots, vineyards that will work. So we're excited about that. And then, as Mike was alluding to, we are working with kind of branching out a little bit from our Oakville, Yountville kind of core, because really what we're looking for is if there's a phenomenal vineyard in a different AVA that really represents Napa, we don't want to feel confined. And so we're working now with some terrific sources, Jim Frediani up in Calistoga. And so we're for both 1 acre and acre. So we're kind of excited to see, what will develop there, and how we can expand through that relationship. Stay tuned.
Well, I have to say, so I opened up today your Zinfandel. Okay?
Oh, great.
And where we are doing, I don't know if you guys are into it, but this is March Madness. And this is what, next to wine and our dog, this is pretty much what my husband and I live for.
Nice.
So we are doing takeout because we're not going out to dinner and miss any games. So we opened up the Zinfandel to pair with some barbecue.
Perfect.
That we're taking home. And I don't know if this is really going to sound like that much of a compliment because you don't know my husband, but this is the biggest compliment you guys can ever get in your lives. When the bottles came, I had them out on the table, and he's like, "Oh, you got wine?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's for the interview for Friday." And he's like, "That is the most beautiful bottle." That is so for my husband to say that.
That's amazing.
That is, and it is absolutely stunning. It is like, just for people who are listening, it's like an etched vineyard, a grapevine, and it is so beautiful. And it really is an incredible bottle, and
Thank you so
they're
much.
all that way. So
we love that compliment.
Yeah, and it's such a joy to take. It's such an absolute joy to take this out in the market because people do respond to it so positively. Whether we're at consumer tastings, if I'm taking it out to people in the trade, it's a conversation piece because the first thing people see when you put that out on the table, they say, "Wow, I don't know if I've ever seen a bottle like that." And that's exactly the reaction that we love to get.
And it was a lot of fun. So when we bought the winery, all of the varietals had the same color scheme, and they were gold and bronze. And we decided we wanted to do a little differentiation and maybe update the colors a little bit. And we also were adding the white because they didn't have a white wine as part of it. And so we,
Cabernet.
there it is.
Yes.
And so it was really interesting. We totally had in our minds, like, okay, we know what we're looking for. This is going to be really easy. You know, we were working with our glass folks and we're like, okay, this is what we're thinking for this, that, and the other. And then we get to the process and we're like, wow, what we thought was going to look good in the actual bottle of wine on the bottle with this color, not as easy as one might think, but it was a really fun process. And yeah, we got some great folks and we're really pleased with the way it turned out.
Luckily,
so we love that
printers,
compliment.
our glass printers were very patient with us because they went through
learning
several
curve.
iterations of all these different wines.
Now, did you have any issues with COVID and the glass? Because I know we had difficulty getting glass. You know, like it wasn't even, because ours is American glass, but it still just couldn't get to us because of COVID. And you know, we just have regular labels. So you're etching that on. That's
I think we got lucky with timing.
Yeah, our last bottling was in March of last year. In fact, I think it was March 11th. So
okay, right before shutdown.
Before shutdown.
Okay.
You know, we were just fortunate to be able to kind of hold tight and, you know, until we're actually going to be bottling in a couple of months now. So we're kind of getting right back into that, you know, ramping up, making sure the glass printer's ready, making sure the glass is available. Our glass providers generally are importing the glass, but they also have a lot of supply domestically and, you know, and a lot of the same molds you can buy, you know, from domestic sources as well. So
hopefully we just will have missed that on either side
of it.
Crossed, but we'll
Fingers
see.
crossed. Yeah.
Yes.
I've been told of no shortages.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. It just was like just getting the delivery, getting it made, all of that stuff. All right. So tell me about the Zinfandel so I can drink.
Well, first off, I'm so excited that you're having it with barbecue. So well chosen.
That's our go-to as well.
Yeah.
Is it? All right.
Barbecue, pizza, tacos, chili, just it's a great casual, you know, perfect bottle. I think really accessible. So this is the 2017 that you're drinking, which is 90% Zinfandel and 10% Syrah, coming from Oakville and Yountville. You're probably getting those notes. I feel like we should be opening them. So you got some black fruit. What I really like is there's great fruit in it, but it's not super jammy. I love the pepper and spice components to it.
It is definitely a blind tasting Zinfandel. As soon as you bring it up to your nose, it's got that pepper that is that screams Zinfandel.
Yeah. And it's, you know, Napa does not have a whole lot of Zinfandel these days. I mean, obviously things are planted largely to Cabernet when we're talking reds.
And in fact, Oakville has even less. The Hoxies are the only ones that are still growing Zinfandel in Oakville.
Wow.
So it's a very unique vineyard. And, you know, one of the things that really makes it unique is that the Hoxies, they own a lot of the land there. There's actually a hill that separates Oakville and Yountville. That they also own the land too, and it's not planted to vineyards, but it provides kind of a natural break for the fog coming up from San Pablo Bay. And as a result, you know, you still get the cooler weather, but you get a lot of sunlight. So it's really about as cool climate as you really find Zinfandel ripening regularly. You know, like I know there's still some of those old vines in the Russian River that produce incredible Zinfandels, but they don't produce them every year, which is why obviously regions like Rockpile and Dry Creek Valley are more popular for it. Oakville is probably somewhere in between. It's maybe a little bit closer to what you'd find in Russian River Valley, but again, with enough sunlight that you're getting full ripening and just incredibly even ripening of the grape clusters. It's so fun to go out in the vineyard right before harvest and see this incredibly even ripening.
Zinfandel is typically a bitch to grow, right? Right. It's famous for for, annoying the vineyard owners by being, ripe on this side and green on this side type thing.
Right. Sometimes on the same bunch. Exactly.
Yes, right.
Often on the same bunch. So.
Yeah. But yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, because I'm like, Cab is king in Napa. And, if you're going to pick a queen, I think you have to go with Sauvignon Blanc in Napa as being the queen. But you have Zinfandel and Merlot. And so my question is like, how are you choosing what varieties you want to make? And I mean, if it's got to be difficult to have gotten into this contract with the Zinfandel, since it's not that common there.
Well, and again, because of the relationship with the Hoxies and I mean, there's a little bit of a family history with the Hoxies too. I mean, Andrew Hoxie and my dad have been friends for a number of years. And so there's just kind of this synergy and this kind of feeling of family when, whenever I'm actually at the winery, just, seeing any of the Hoxies around, his daughters, Kendall and Morgan, are now, working full time, one on the winery side and the other on the vineyard side. And, we've just always felt like, within reason, obviously, because they have other contracts, but if something comes available that, that we need, we feel like we're able to get what we need in order to produce the wines that we need to produce. And so we feel really fortunate to be able to work with these, these 35, 40-year-old Zinfandel vines that, again, are in the heart of Oakville and increasingly unique to be able to work with. As far as the other varietals go, it was really, Zinfandel, Merlot, and Cabernet were what Bob and Dave were making from the very first vintage of Acre. We added Sauvignon Blanc, as you said. I mean, this is the queen of Napa, and in our opinion, this was kind of the most natural wine that we could have worked with in the Napa Valley. Obviously, there are some people who are growing great Chardonnay, but Napa Wine Company is in Oakville and Yountville, and there are some good Chardonnay vineyards in Yountville, but there are some great Sauvignon Blanc vineyards throughout the valley. And in fact, the 2019 Sauvignon Blanc that you're working with is coming from the Blockhouse Vineyard in Yountville, again, owned by the Hoxie family. They've been farming these for a number of years. Yeah.
That one's a tough one on the green screen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so picking the varietals though, too, I think that kind of ties into what what we're trying to do in our philosophy. And it's really to make, those classic Napa wines that are accessible from a flavor profile standpoint, but also from a price standpoint. And obviously in Napa, things can get really crazy really fast, especially when you're talking about Cabernet. So we're really happy that we, have kind of committed to that and keep these so you can actually, for a more everyday drinking experience, that they are accessible. And as far as, again, with respect to like the casual pairing, the Zinfandel, we love it. Again, pull it out for, we're doing with pizza. We actually, one of our favorite recents that we've been making probably too much is a shredded white chicken chili. That's just fantastic with it. And so I think, we're picking things that we love to drink. We also, love Burgundian varietals and love Russian River. And actually we're pretty open-minded with different varieties of wine. We're not really discriminating, but
we drink them all.
Discriminating as to quality, but not, I only like this. And by the way, we love Cab Franc. So we're thrilled with what you guys are making. That's very exciting. But yeah, and the Zinfandel that you're drinking, kind of being new to this side of the wine world, we were thrilled that it won the best in class for all the Zinfandels at the American Fine Wine Competition last year, right before COVID shut everything down.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so we were very excited about that. And Wine Enthusiast gave it 90 points, which was really nice. So, getting those little accolades here, particularly, I think when you're, newer on this side of things, is great. The Sauvignon Blanc just got 91 points from James Suckling.
Wow. Wow, how did you, impressive. I can't, he doesn't even answer my emails.
I know, right?
I've
There's
never
like the
spoken
black
to him.
hole,
Like,
but
we you know, it's
maybe
nice
that's
to be
good.
part of these trade groups. You send the wines off and then you
Fingers
pray.
crossed. Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, to that point, like with the Cabernet, this was probably like one of the most exciting things to see and have kind of validated. And because, you know, again, we were like, how is this going to work? We sent them off. And then all of a sudden we get notification that Wine Spectator named our Cabernet one of 9 outstanding Napa Valley Cabernet values. So to have them acknowledge and recognize, we were just like, this is incredible, because that's really what we're trying
You better
to do.
start ramping up your production, because when people,
It is funny
when people read that, it's, you know.
Yeah, it was great. And they gave it 91 points. And we've seen, like you just said, a lot more, you know, interest. And we've had people reaching out from just bizarre, you know, you're like, okay, wow.
Yeah, you see who pays attention to that when you start to see, you know, sales pick up in certain markets, you know, and you know, everywhere from online retailers to wine shops to, you know, country club purchases. I mean, you name it, people pay attention to the wine press. And so, you know, again, it feels like a black box when you send it out to them, and it is a black box, which, you know, ideally, right? Because you're not supposed to have a relationship with them. They're supposed to just be tasting your wine and judging them on their merits. But it certainly feels good when they recognize what you're doing and give it praise.
Yeah,
feels good.
Take it.
Absolutely.
Isn't it kind of like a nerve-wracking email, right? You see, you know, Wine Enthusiast or Wine Spectator has rated your wine, because that's what it says in the, you know, the subject heading, and you're like, you know?
That's like college applications.
Yes,
Except there's no thickness.
I was just going to say, but there's no thickness to guide you. You know, you have no idea.
Right.
But
or you have to get 90 points to pass the test too. So.
Right. Well, this Zin is beautiful, and if the other wines, which I'm sure they are just as quality, you can taste the quality in it. And this is definitely, like I said, it is Zinfandel. I've got that pepper, I've got that dark fruit. It's beautiful. It's got a little bit of menthol in it, which I adore. Like I get all happy when there's that like eucalyptus-y kind of menthol thing. It just makes me happy. And the finish is really, really long. And it doesn't have a lot of Zins. Even like the Zins I actually really like, they're big in bite. And this is not. This has got it, you know, it's got all of the flavor on that palate, but it's the tannins are just so well integrated that there's no bite to it on the finish. It's a really a very silky finish for a Zinfandel. So
thank you
for that.
It is excellent. So what are the price points of these now recognized top value wines?
Yes, thank you for asking. The Sauvignon Blanc is $23 retail. The Zinfandel is $29.
Oh,
the
wow.
Merlot is $32, and the Cab is $48.
And they're Napa people.
You know, it's not easy to produce wines at a reasonable price point in Napa these days. You know, the price of fruit is what it is, but you know, we try and produce the best quality wine that we can. We're again fortunate to work with producers where we have long-term contracts, and we feel we can provide a little bit of stability in that way in terms of price points. And
indeed,
here we are.
So I have to ask, do you have friends in other wineries that say you're charging too little?
Yes.
I will say that there has been at least one retailer who has said to us, you know, gee, I'd love to sell your wines, but I just feel like the prices are a little too low. Boy,
wait a second.
Well, our customers expect to pay more for Napa wine.
We're like, okay, here's 1 acre.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. You know, you can.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you go ahead, sell it for, you know, well, actually, they're already probably making more money on it than the way the tier system works. But
Exactly.
so you currently, or at least what I've seen, you are a straight variety house, a varietal house, correct?
That's right. We have so far been making strictly varietal wines. I mean, all of them, with the exception of the Merlot and the Sauvignon Blanc are 100% varietally Merlot and Sauvignon Blanc this vintage. Again, the Zinfandel we generally blend with a little bit of Syrah, sometimes Petit Syrah. Cabernet tends to be blended with other Bordeaux varietals. This one I think has Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, the classics.
Right.
We have talked about doing some blends, red blends, not white blends yet. White blends are one of those wine categories that, unless you just really, and again, you're down in Paso, so obviously there are some great wineries making, white Rhone blends that are very, very well regarded. But up in Napa, I have friends who are Napa producers, and they struggle with their white blends because the consumer doesn't always understand that a lot of the wines from the old country were in fact blends of other grapes. They were not 100% one variety or another.
Okay.
But that doesn't always translate. So yeah, we make varietal wines.
Awesome. And now your winemaker is Richard Bruno, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So how did you guys come together? Was there an interview process? Sometimes they interview they interview you, so you interview them.
I think there was a little bit of that. Yeah. I think we both interviewed each other for sure. I actually had known Richard for a number of years because he Venom Cellars is the winery that he founded with.
Yes.
So that winery had been with the Henry Wine Group for a number of years, and so I knew Richard very well. When we were purchasing the winery, there were a number of people who were mentioned to us who make wine at the Napa Wine Company. Venom Cellars has made wine at the Napa Wine Company since their very first vintage, and when Richard's name was mentioned to me, it was just kind of like, when the light bulb goes off in your head and you say, yeah, I think that would be a good fit. We'll blend really well together. And Talley, I don't think had met him at that point, or maybe
I'd met him maybe years ago. Yeah.
But we spent a little bit of time talking to him, but I do think that I think we were being interviewed every bit as much, if not more so, than we were interviewing him.
And it's kind of another
we passed the test.
Full circle story. Richard loves to tell this, that he credits Warner, Mike's dad, for taking a chance on him when he was right out of UC Davis, and he and Chris, his business partner, were starting Venom. He took a chance and to represent them, and this was the whole reason that Warner founded the Henry Wine Group to begin with, was because he recognized this kind of place in the market where he really wanted to represent family-owned wineries from around the world who weren't getting the kind of representation he thought that they should get back in the 80s. And so Richard, absolutely felt like, fell into that category some years later, and Warner took that chance on him, and Richard credits a lot of his success to kind of having that launch. And he loves the fact that he feels like it's coming full circle, that 25 years later, he's helping us, grow Acre and One Acre and take those to the next level. So I will say from the get-go, like it's funny when we're talking about this, I can't believe that again, it just felt like it was meant to be. The partnership we have with him, the collaboration, he's an incredible mentor. He's a terrific educator. He's extremely patient. He is a perfectionist with what he does, but he's also very laid back too. And we so enjoy, the other thing is he's a terrific listener in that, like, when, we have a vision of what we're trying to do, he has the expertise to be the one to make it happen. And it's very much,
or to tell us we're dreaming too big, which
is often.
Important.
I've been accused of having wild ideas of what we could be doing in the winery, and Richard is always
he's practical.
He's very practical, and he's very good at kind of reining in your dreams and making them more achievable.
Yes, that's good. That's a good quality.
Yeah, and very much appreciated. And he, but sitting down with him and coming up with, the blends and what we want to do, it's a terrific part of the experience, and we couldn't be in better hands. And it's funny now that, if you asked that question, because I'm like, God, it just was seamless,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it really was. And in fact, that we hadn't even completed the sale of the winery or the purchase of the winery when Richard and I were doing our first harvest in 2017, right before the fires.
We brought him on 6 months earlier than the sale actually completed.
Oh,
so we're
okay.
like, okay, this doesn't work out. We're making something. We will come up with what that is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love those guys. I love them. I have not met them in person, but they've been participating in Cap Franc Day for years, and just
Well, they source a lot of fruit in Paso Robles too. I mean, they're down there pretty often. In fact, their red dirt red, I think, is all Paso fruit.
Yes, it is. And just the emails, the conversation, and just the interactions on social media. I just love them. I'm like, one of these days I'm actually going to get there and meet you guys in real life. But even yesterday, when I posted the story that I would be talking to the two of you today, they commented. They're like, "Oh, they're the best people. They're so nice," and I'm like, "Well,
That's
you know what? If you're saying this, then they've got to be, because I think they're spectacular,
Well, and I mean, they are exactly who they seem to be. I mean, you go into their winery, and both Richard and Chris Condos are they're so accessible and kind, and again, always generous with their time.
Yeah.
And we don't even work with Chris, but I still feel like Chris is every bit as accessible and every bit as much a potential mentor anyway as Richard is to us every day. So it's
absolutely,
we feel very fortunate.
I talk about it all the time, but I in terms of Paso, but I think it's true in most wine regions. It's a very different relationship than any other, I think, business in the world. That wineries, winemakers, winery owners, it's a family, and you may or may not know them personally, but they know what you're going through, what they're going through, and there's always this support system within your little area, and I just think that that's something very unique to the wine world.
Well, and it's so, I feel like the relationships are so kind of interspersed, and you're all kind of relying on each other to make this work, and all these different kind of pieces that come together. And another one for us that literally just, so we were in the tasting room at the Napa Wine Company. Our acre was poured there because they had a collective, which was really nice. And we're starting out with all of this and, kind of a seamless piece of it. Okay, it's there. That's great. And then they decided to close the tasting room to the collective piece of it and focus on the estate brands. Totally a great decision for them. Makes perfect sense. And we're like, oh my God, all right, we got to figure this out now. What are we going to do? And we're a mom and pop shop here. We weren't really in the position to be like, let's open a tasting room on top of all of this, So, and just coincidentally, Mike was with one of our terrific reps from the Henry Wine Group, or then Winebow, and is like,
I was actually doing what they call the classic work with. I was riding along and going and visiting retailers. We had an hour to spare for lunch, and she said, "Why don't we go on over to the studio at Feasted Forward and just chat with them?" "Oh, that'd be a great collective for you to join. Have you ever thought about that?" "No, hadn't thought about it."
And I get the text. He's like, "I found our collective. This is amazing. What, you have to come look at this." And so I went and looked at it the next day, and we're like, "Yep, we're in. This is amazing." And it's this terrific. So Katie Schaefer, who's the founder of Feast It Forward, is just this interesting, creative, visionary. I mean, just a total like firecracker. She's got more energy than anyone I've ever met. And she's created this space that's about a 15 winery or so collective that her whole aim is to bring people together through wine, food, music, design, and philanthropy. And she really focuses on each of those elements. And so with the space itself, it's, there's a whole bunch of indoor lounges. Those have not been utilized as much over the last year, but the outdoor lounges as well, which it always had and which have expanded and are going to continue to expand, are just these awesome little spots where you can reserve a lounge and go hang out. during the colder months, she's done Winter Wineland, where we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. All these outdoor spots. You can reserve an igloo.
I saw them.
Right?
I actually have a question. I'm like, what's with the pods?
Yeah, so it's basically for your
pods.
pod. There's fire pits as well, and picnic tables, live music, an outdoor boxcar bar, wood-fired pizzas, s'mores kits.
Wow.
Hot chocolate. You can bring your kids and your dogs. And the cool thing is, these lounges are constantly, the design elements are constantly changing. So you'll come and have one, experience, and then you'll come back maybe a month or two later, and it'll be, or a week later even, and it'll be different. And all of the design elements are available for purchase. If you see something you're inspired, she's like, here's our partner who we partner with on this, which is great. She's with the food piece of it. There's a show kitchen where she does cooking demonstrations, because they also have the Feast Network that they put out a lot of content. And during the concert series for Bottle Rock, one of Mike's and my favorite elements of this is she'll get bands that are playing at Bottle Rock. They come over and play. It's called Riffs and Recipes. So they're playing, she's doing the cooking demonstration, and they kind of riff back and forth with it. And then everyone has a glass of wine, hanging out with the band afterwards, and just a lot of fun. Yeah. So kind of a different, it's not your formal tasting experience, for people with dogs or kids, or if you just want to go hang out, you can hang out all afternoon, and you can do a flight, you can do a bottle, you can do a glass. And we encourage people to pick up food from Oxbow Market, which is right across the street and has all these great specialty shops and restaurants. Bring it over and just kind of have your afternoon. So it felt like, again, we're like, we couldn't have come up with something better ourselves. She just has nailed it. And we love it.
That's fantastic. And again, just perfect timing, because I'm sure there's probably a wait list to get in there,
It was great timing.
Yeah, it was really great timing.
And a great place for during COVID, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Because she literally just pivoted. She took over the parking lot, put down turf, all the picnic tables, got, again, the box wine, the food trucks, and supported all the local, that relationship piece, supported all these local restaurants who only had indoor space, had partnered with them to come a different night of the week so they could actually, stay alive too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That
Really,
is wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how everyone has managed to survive during COVID. It hasn't been easy for a lot of businesses, but for the ones that have, it's really come down to just figuring out a new way to do
new angles.
Been doing. Right. Yeah, exactly. And I would imagine that some of the innovations she came up with during COVID will probably outlast it too. I think that,
well, that's the thing. She's expanding. Her whole plan after doing this outdoor piece of it is she's taken over the property next door, and we're going to expand into that and have, these permanent outdoor installations, these fun little spots that you can go, reserve and have permanent food trucks there. Nice. Yeah, which is great.
Indoor lounges once that's
right. Yes, those are
to do again.
When we can finally remember what that is.
Exactly. I don't have to bring layers. What?
Right.
I have no muscle memory of what it was like to be at large indoor gatherings anymore.
I know, exactly. But anyway, we are coming up to the hour point, and so let's tell people, where can they find you on social media? Let's start off with that. Where can they find you on social media?
Social media, we are at Acre Napa Valley on all the pertinent, I don't know, we're not on 4chan or anything like that, but yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Yes, Acre Napa Valley on Facebook, at Acre Napa Valley on Instagram. And acrewines.com is our website, and we have wine clubs. We're very flexible with them and, customize. So we would love for people to come visit us there.
And that was my next question. How about that wine club? What I saw there were lots of, I thought we had lots of modifications for them. You blow me out of the water. So give us your best pitch for your wine club.
Okay.
What they can get.
Quarterly shipments keep me very busy.
Yes. Mom and pop shop. Yeah. So we have 3 wine clubs. The first is the Acre Circle Club, which is 1 acre and acre wines. And you can decide, they come 3 times a year. You pick 3, 6, 12, 24 bottles, And you can also pick reds only. Since we were getting lots of requests for that, we decided to make it an option for the red drinkers. Acre Social Club is just Acre Wines, and same choices for that. And then the third one is the 1 Acre 4840 Club, and that's just 1 Acre Wines twice a year.
All right, so loads of options, and again, they can choose what tier how many they want in that last thing, also, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So lots and lots of options, and I'm telling, this Zinfandel is killer. It really is, and those prices are literally insane that you're in Napa, and those are the prices. So I honestly can't wait to dig into the other ones.
Yeah, we can't wait to hear what you think.
Yeah.
And we would love to meet you in person, either up here or down there one of these days when that's possible again.
Absolutely. I get my second shot on Wednesday. I'm like raring
So do
to
we.
Okay.
We do 2 on Wednesday. Yay.
2 weeks from Wednesday, man. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going.
Can't wait.
Exactly what we've been saying.
Give my mom a big hug.
Yes. And then your tasting room is at Feast It Forward, which is, I think everybody knows Oxbow Market, or should know Oxbow Market. So that's right across the street from the Oxbow Market.
1033 McKinn Street, right across the street.
1031.
Yeah, 1031.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mhm.
They'll
They probably
say
have
it.
1031 now too. Yeah.
Yeah, downtown Napa, right across from Oxbow.
And then how do they do it? Making a reservation? I mean, now COVID, everything is reservation, but
Actually, you
see
can
yourself
walk in.
Oh, really?
You can, you can totally walk in, even now. If you want to reserve one of the igloos, then you need to call to reserve that. But there's tons of other safe outdoor spaces that are terrific. And so, yeah, you can absolutely walk in, even at this point, which is great.
That is fantastic. But so I want to thank you. It was so much. I had a pleasure talking to you too, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I really do. The Zinfandel is beautiful, and I can't wait to have dinner so I can see how it goes with the barbecue. It's going to be awesome. I know it's going to be awesome. And I might have to give myself another little glass before my husband gets home with the food. You know, that's what he gets for not coming home late, you know?
Exactly.
Right. So
Thank you so much for the chance to talk with you. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you helping us get our Acre and 1 Acre story out there.
I wish you a wonderful night, a wonderful day, and I will say slancha. Enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoytbud. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Music is Wine by Kevens. Until next week, slancha.
Tempranillo on the lovely bar.